So why don't we jump in and get started? So Rebecca, I can just pass the time right over to you. I know you're going to do a little introduction of yourself.
Yeah.
And just for everyone to know, Rebecca is going to present for the first chunk of our coffee chat, going to talk through some things. Please stay engaged in the chat. So feel free, write in your comments, questions that you have that we can kind of talk through at the end, anything like that. Please feel free, keep that chat active. And then towards the end of the session today, we're going to have a little breakout room activity. So Rebecca's created an awesome activity for us to go into some smaller groups to discuss together. So to get to know a couple of people and talk through this topic. So we'll do that, and then we'll kind of come together at the end, share our main takeaways or aha moments, and then wrap it up. So that's the kind of agenda for the day. So Rebecca, I'll pass it over to you.
Great. Hey, welcome everybody. I'm so appreciative of especially those of us who are West. It's a little bit early in the morning, and I'm just so grateful that everybody's interested in this topic, first of all, but I've just received the most amazing amount of love and support through this process. And I was telling Erin and Andressa that getting ready for this conversation has been quite the journey of self-reflection and conversations with people that I've worked with, people that I manage, colleagues who've, have been in my life for, over 10 years now. So it's been a great experience, and let's kind of get going and kick off the conversation. Advocating for your voice, owning your seat at the table. We will get into it in just a sec here. So quick background on me. I've had about 15 years in TV marketing and sales in Los Angeles, working at a company where we sold television advertising to dentists. Absolutely as interesting as it sounds. But it was a great company and a really great group of people during the most formative years of my career. I've been about 10 years in digital ads training. I came to MarketStar in 2009 when my husband and my son and I decided to come back home. I was born and bred in Ogden, and 2009, big recession. It was just the perfect time to leave Los Angeles. So I got a job at MarketStar in 2009. I had no idea that there was a huge sales outsourcing company right here in my hometown. I left MarketStar for a couple of years and then came back 2 years ago. And as I said, I'm here in HQ over my time at MarketStar, and adding this up was a real shock to me yesterday. I've served 8 different programs at MarketStar, in everything from our teams that were supporting cell phone companies to digital ads, and even doing some time on the HP team, which was a really broad scope of work for HP. So now at this point, all of the digital ads training for our business unit is under my umbrella. So I have a pretty big group of incredible trainers in digital ads that I get to work with on a week-to-week basis. So just on the personal side, I keep chickens in my backyard. I read comic books. I read a lot, but comic books are my favorite. And I mix cocktails. I'm a huge booze nerd. And you'll see that evidenced in a photo that I'm going to show you in just a little bit. But that's the personal stuff. And just to kind of kick off the conversation, being able to advocate for your own voice, really owning who you are and what your seat at the table is, it might be easy to talk about. And that's been sort of my discovery through working on this presentation, is I talk about it every day with the folks that I work with, people I don't work with my son, my husband. knowing what your voice is and how to get it out there, it's an easy conversation to have, but it's really, really, really hard to do, as evidenced by the story that I'm going to tell you right now. When I found out I was going to be running this coffee chat, I immediately started hunting for social science around making your voice heard and presence, and looking for quotes by professionals like, Sheryl Sandberg, right? And Angela Duckworth, and just like all of these people that I know write about this kind of thing a lot. And I had to kind of pull up and check myself, because my first instinct was to discount my own experience and my own opinions on this subject. And I had to kind of remind myself, Belinda Barnes put my name forward for this because of her experiences with me, because she's watched me lead for a long time, because, she's been in probably hundreds of meetings and projects with me. So it was interesting to me that even then my instinct was that my voice, my experience, my opinions wasn't quite enough. It wasn't enough to bring to the table. So in the spirit of actually putting my money where my mouth is here, I'm coming at this from a completely personal place. Only my experiences, only my opinions. We're going to give Sheryl Sandberg the day off. And this is just me you're getting here. So I do want to talk briefly about the kind of obstacles that me, being a woman of my age, that I was up against as my career was developing, and also as I was just developing as a young female growing up in Utah. The societal expectations for little girls in the 70s, and this isn't unique to Utah, but, it was very much be agreeable. Don't make waves. You really should defer to authoritative voices. Make things easy for other people. And this, I'm sure this sounds familiar, even if you're not a child of the 70s and 80s. But it was so prevalent in, yeah, Brandy, yeah, absolutely. It was so prevalent in the 70s. And I have to admit, I came from a household that was probably very much ahead of its time. My father was a pretty serious feminist, and words that I heard to describe myself, to describe me in my household, were words like self-possessed, well-spoken, things like that. I'd get outside of my house, at school, at church, out in the neighborhood, and the words turned to bossy. Smarty pants was another one. And so I felt like I kind of had to be two very, very different people when I was at home versus when I was out trying to kind of function. Yeah, know it all. That's a very familiar one, Jessica. So, I really started developing coping mechanisms out in the real world, because there's a certain period of your life you kind of, you just want to function. You don't really want to be getting all of the attention. So that was my childhood. Getting into my early career in the 80s and 90s, the worm really turned when I was my career was forming in Los Angeles. The thing that was happening was, like, women, we had to level set to the men in the room, talk like the guys, act like the guys, do what the guys do, learn to golf, because that's where the conversations are happening. That's where relationships are being built. Don't talk about your kids. If you have kids, don't talk about them. Because kids were seen as a liability for a woman who was kind of building her career. And in that period of time, I actually had a really informative moment with my boss, who had just been promoted to a VP, and she was talking about this level set to the guys. And she said that she had realized that when she was in these meetings with the other VPs, the directors, if she suppressed her female voice, if she set aside the stuff that made her a woman in those conversations, she was removing the point of view of all the women at our company. And she also called out that 50% of that company was female. And she said, if I do that, I remove their voices from the conversation. And it was a huge moment for her. And I have to say that moment really stuck with me. Now, it was an informative moment, but I still wouldn't say she was the most enlightened leader. I wouldn't say that she really did a lot to help me find my voice. And when I say that, you were told don't talk about your kids, she was the person who said that to me, because it changes the way the men in the organization see you. So, we all have our blind spots, but I think I can pinpoint that as a very specific moment where I thought my voice, who I am, represents every community that I'm a part of, whether that's women, whether that's the older colleagues here at MarketStar. Every single one of you has a community that you're representing. And I also want to address a bit of what I see as a misconception. We have this idea that if you have the professional skills, you have the confidence, you have the knowledge, you will automatically end up in this nirvana of undeniable executive presence and a voice that everybody is going to want to hear when you're in the room. And it's just not true. I have found this process to be literally something that I have to look at and work on every single day. And I've been able to sort of boil it down to the two things that I think about all the time. Something that I evaluate every day in my interactions, projects, meetings, whatever, is what's my part? Not my title, not how I'm seen by the other people in the room, but what is my part in the conversation, in the initiative, in this relationship? Am I a subject matter expert? Am I advocating for something? Am I a skeptic? Am I a leader in this interaction? And then the other thing that I think about a lot is my identity. And we're going to really kind of break that down. And that's what our breakout activity is really based around, is this idea of identity. What am I consistently bringing to the table? So first part, right? Actively decide what your part is. And like I said, every day, this is on my mind. Why am I in the room or in the conversation, the initiative, the project, whatever it is? Who am I? What is my part? Am I a leader, subject matter expert, skeptic, teacher, arbiter? I have literally been in the room as a referee before, in spite of my title. If I'm in the room as a leader, maybe my part is advocacy, empathy. Maybe I'm protecting something. I'm protecting some culture, protecting work I've done, work that other people have done. It can mean a lot of different things. And I do think about that when I'm in a meeting. If my part is leader, what part of leadership is really going to bring value to this interaction? If I'm in the room as a trainer, my part is what? I'm imparting knowledge. Maybe I'm uncovering questions, instilling confidence in my audience. So you can see when you think about your part, there's a lot that can go into that. And like I said, it really is something that I think about all the time. Very often I'm in the room purely for my own information. Maybe my part is 100% to listen. in which case, not a lot of voice, not a lot of presence is going to be needed. But if I'm really listening, I might hear something that could cause me to act. So who you are, what your title is, it doesn't necessarily define your part. You define that in the conversation. And the way I think about it is there value I can bring? Now, the next part is that identity piece. Why did I pick this really goofy picture of me? This is me in Kentucky a couple of months ago. I'm at a distillery called Rabbit Hole, and that is a huge bubbling living vat of mash that is going to become really, really, really good bourbon someday when it grows up. Now, what happened in this moment is the tour guide told us that it was completely okay if we stuck our fingers into the mash and tasted it. It tasted like warm beer. This is how excited I was when I was told I could stick my fingers into the vat and taste it. And I did that at every single distillery that would allow us to. This is probably the epitome of my nerdiness, my, sort of my interest in the world, all the things that sort of make up Rebecca. And when we talk about identity, I really want you to think, like, at the deepest personal level, what are the building blocks of your identity? I wrote down 10 that really ring true for me. Female, intensely nerdy, obviously. I've already mentioned bourbon, mash, and comic books, and chickens. I'm 58 years old, which is a hard thing to own sometimes, but I'll talk about that a little bit more. I'm a humanist. I have a humanist worldview, which affects the way I move throughout my day and every relationship I have. I'm very opinionated, have been since I was a kid. I'm a storyteller. Anybody who's on my team currently is probably like smiling and maybe even rolling their eyes. I believe that we as human beings understand the world best through stories. So that's important to me. I tend to be kind of hyperbolic. I am funny on occasion. My hyperbole sort of helps in my humor. I think humor is a very, very powerful tool in the world, in leadership, in empathy. I lean toward being kind of foul-mouthed, much to probably my mom's chagrin, although she had a tendency to lob the occasional F-bomb herself. But, you've probably seen the posts that people who use a lot of profanity are very, very intelligent. And I absolutely believe that that's true. I choose to believe that that's true. And if Nick Eddy is here, he'll know exactly what I'm talking about. And then empathy is a huge part of my building blocks. Empathetic almost to a fault. If you tell me a sad story, the tears will come, whether it's appropriate or not. Just expect me to cry. So one thing that I do want, it's important to call out, right? Set aside your skills as you think about this. Think of what you are rather than who. This is going to be important for the breakout. And also understand that these kind of traits that you bring in, these are assets and they're liabilities in any given situation, which is what I'm going to dig into right now. Let's see, but I won't skip this slide. Who you are might bring you into the room, right? I get invited to a lot of stuff because I am the senior training manager for digital ads. But it's really knowing what I am that empowers my voice and helps me to bring it out and amplify it in the conversation. And here's what I'm talking about. Every day is a process for me of accepting and valuing these traits in myself. And you can see I've called out 3 in particular: female, 58 years old, and humanist. When I look at these traits, these are the ones that come with me in every single conversation, interaction, project. These are the ones that are just there all the time. And the 58 years old one, this is something every day, friends. I have to look in the mirror and accept the fact that when I get to the MarketStar building and I come up to the 5th floor, I'm the oldest person here. On any given day, I might be the oldest person in this building. And in digital ads especially, it is a young industry, very young. More women all the time, but women of my age, woof, we're unicorns. There's not very many of us. And I think it's also worth bringing up the societal thing that we're still struggling with. With every birthday I have, my value in society at large is diminished. So every day, this is, it's not aging, it's leveling up. You know what? I think that's my mantra when I look in the mirror. I leveled up. 2 weeks ago, I leveled up to 58 years old. But the important thing about my age, everybody, is that it is huge. It brings incredible value to my conversations. It brings value to my interactions. My view as a 58-year-old woman adds value to every project, every interaction that I have. I know this for a fact, and that's because I think about it a lot. And so when you start looking at these traits, not only do you have to kind of own them, but you have to look for the value. And sometimes it's hard. You know, I do have conversations every once in a while where I'm like, I feel way too old to have anything to say about this. But generally, that is a fleeting thought because, like I said, it's a muscle I build every single day, is owning these traits. And I got to say, you know, being female, being 58 years old, for the majority of my career, everybody, any room I was in, those were seen as liabilities. I had to make them assets, you know, and talk about them as if they're assets and change the minds and change the viewpoints of the people that I work with. And it's been a chore. It's not easy, but it's been pretty wonderful. And I say 58 with incredible pride now. When I combine the value of of all of these traits, and I do have to work through them and think about them. When I combine that with my belief and the clarity that I have about my part, that's when my voice, my seat at the table, it's undeniable. You know, that's when it's that knowing inside of me, I guess, or it just tells me who and what I am in that engagement. So let me see here. Yeah, so let's just I wanted to just review it, right? The 2 things that are on my mind all day, every day. What is my part, regardless of how I'm seen? And I think that's really important because you're in an interaction, you're in a room, the people in there may see you a certain way, but that does not define what your part is. You need to define that and lean into where you're going to bring the most value. And, you know, I always put subject matter expert, advocate, skeptic, leader. These are the parts that I'm usually bringing to most, but sometimes it's something completely different. Sometimes I'm in the room purely to empathize. Sometimes I'm there just to, you know, pick a fight to a degree. I had a great conversation with Nick Eddy, because Nick and I have been in leadership together for so many years. And he's called out specifically on ad role leadership way back in the day when I was the person in the room stopping the bringing the conversation to a screeching halt and saying, guys, we can't look at it this way. Sometimes these things made me unpopular, but, you know, he told me that what happened over time was that they did it on their own, right? It wasn't exactly what would Rebecca do, but they learned to, you know, my voice stayed in the room even when I wasn't there, I think is probably the way to look at that. So we'll get into it in just a second, but when you start doing this and when we start supporting each other in our voices and in owning our place, it's the gift that keeps on giving. So here's some practical actions. Everything that I've talked to up until now is a little bit on the philosophical side, right? It's very self-reflective, but there's really practical stuff that we can do and that I can tell you I do all the time. Be strategic about it. Leverage leadership, leverage your colleagues. I will ask my leaders for backup in high stakes situations. Because when you're in training, sometimes you go into leadership meetings with news that people don't really want to hear, right? There's a lot of holding people accountable. And I will go to my leader and say, hey, I'm going to deliver this message to the team. I want your backup. When I say this thing, I want you to use your voice to amplify mine. It is completely okay to do that. That's being strategic. Sometimes finding your voice means making sure that you add someone else's to it to really get the point across or to amplify your message. Also, it's so important. We have to be okay with imperfect timing. You might have a moment of clarity and voice and presence, and your message isn't heard, or it isn't the right time for the message. And you can't let that affect whether or not you bring your voice and your presence in the room the next time. I hope that makes sense, right? Like, you may have an incredible moment of self-possession and voice, and it's not the right moment. Be okay with that. There may be a better day to bring it up, but what you can't do is let it affect your voice in the future. And then be aware of discounting. All of us have language we use to sort of discount our point of view and our opinions and our experiences. This has come up a lot in the coffee chats, right? When we apologize, hey, I'm sorry, I have a question. No, we can't be sorry when we have questions. Don't apologize for what you need or what you know, and watch for that language that discounts what you're going to say, right? Hey, it's probably just me, but, right? Listen for that language and get rid of it. And then this is the most important thing. If you took nothing else away from the coffee chat, this thing right here. Watch for moments to help each other. Build a circle of influence around yourself, whether that's close friends that you work with, colleagues that you trust, colleagues that you don't even know that well, you know, people that you know in passing. build that circle of influence and then give them permission to check you on discounting language, apologizing. We have to keep in mind, none of us operate at 100% all the time. Nobody operates with 100% self-possession and clarity about their voice and what their part is in the conversation. My most informative moment, believe it or not, was actually not even that long ago when I was working with a woman named Tess Bell, who so many of you know, and she might have even, I think she was even in one of these coffee chats once as a featured speaker. But we were working together at a company outside of MarketStar, and we were in a very high stakes conversation with a lot of leaders. I was exhausted. I wasn't working at 100% of my self-possession that day. I was probably at about a solid 35. And the conversation was moving very fast. And Tess just paused. She stopped the whole thing and she said, Rebecca, I feel like you have something to say, and I want Rebecca's perspective on this. And she said it with such wonderful confidence, while at the same time she was calling me out just a little bit, because, you know, she could see, woman, you've got something to say. Why are you not? Right? But the whole thing stopped. And sure enough, I was able to take a deep breath, bring my perspective to it. But not only did she make space for me, because I wasn't at 100%, right? But the entire tone of that conversation altered. It shifted gears. Everything slowed down. And other voices in the room started coming forward. So, you know, she made space for me, and then maybe unintentionally made space for a lot of other opinions and experiences in that room. And I would say that if there's someone in the room whose voice, they're not getting it out there, or they feel like they can't, you're missing something fundamental in that conversation. So watch for it. We've got to support each other and make space for each other. And then here's where I want to bring in my good friend Anna Stariha, who is going to give you a great example of sort of a pay it forward, checking your colleague type of conversation. So Anna, I'll just let you take it here.
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, if you're an empathetic crier, I am very sorry. However, this conversation has impacted the trajectory of my career in a way that I would not be where I am today without having this exact conversation with Rebecca. Those of you who don't know me, I joined MarketStar in 2020, and I got the joys of starting under Rebecca back in 2021. So it was quite a while ago. And this all started, I mean, we all grow up being told, don't be sassy, don't be loud, stay in your place in society, right? Like that's how this all ends up starting, is just at a very young age. And then all of a sudden we get into our career and we're working on silencing our voice. We're working on not being the person we really could be if we just got to speak our truth. And so this all started for me when I started under Rebecca. I had all very different managers for me. They were all male. It was just a different world. And so I was in a meeting and Rebecca was in there with me. And I started off by saying like, hey, I'm really sorry, but I just want to say, and then I like gave my feedback on whatever was happening. And then she got out of that meeting and she pulled me aside and she talked to me about exactly what all of you guys got to hear today. And through my career under her, we had this conversation so often where maybe I was feeling like I was imposter as I started speaking my truth, or, I was scared to speak up in meetings, and she'd really worked with me very closely on finding my own voice, finding my own value that I'm bringing to the table. And through that process, I became a completely different trainer, different manager, different person. And it was so wildly impactful. And through my time, it became me realizing that other females were doing this as well and were not giving their voice and were not feeling like they were allowed to have value and to be amazing. And there's so many people out there that get to celebrate their wins and to get to be fantastic, and yet they're not, because they just don't feel like they're allowed to. And so I got to have this experience about, would have been almost a month ago now, with Belinda. And for those of you who don't know Belinda, she is like the most amazing at building her brand, who she is as a person. Who do you want to be when you are at work versus at home? Like building up who it is that you want to showcase when you're in front of clients or in front of your peers. And she came in and she did a training for one of our cohorts about building your brand. And she started off with, I really don't want to be like cocky, and I don't know how to say this any other way. So like, I'm sorry, but I'm pretty good at building my brand. And so I want to be here to speak about it with all of you. And I pulled her aside after, and I was like, why are you sorry for being good at that? Like, you should absolutely not be sorry for that. And she's like, because I don't want people to like think I'm full of myself or think I'm cocky. And then I asked her just straight out, I was like, I'm good at training. How do you feel when I say that? And she said, well, you really are good at training. So yeah, like you are. And I was like, okay, but when I say I'm good at training, are you thinking, oh my gosh, she's so cocky. Oh my gosh, she's just really full of herself. Like, I've worked hard to be good at training. I've done a lot of coaching, a lot of mentoring, like getting all of the feedback I can. And absolutely, there's things that I need to learn still. Me saying I'm good at training doesn't mean that there's not anything else for me to learn. It's just saying that I do have value and I do have the capabilities of being a great trainer. So like getting to take that time and share that with her and getting her to see her own value. And then we sat down and we talked for quite a while about, just being a woman in business, being able to speak up and have your value, have your voice. And it ended up all being talked about how Rebecca should definitely be doing this, which is sort of how it all started. But honestly, I think the biggest thing is just the fact that like having the ability to talk to other people and know like where it comes from and also how it can influence people in the future it's vital for all of us to succeed.
Yeah, thank you so much, Anna. Belinda was also going to kind of join in here, but turns out she had an appointment. But so to me, the whole thing is like you have these conversations and then the conversations get had, right? So when I say build a circle of influence, it increases, right? You have the conversation with someone, and then they have the conversation with someone else, and then we just kind of keep building on this. So thank you, Anna. I appreciate it so much. So we're up to the breakouts now. Okay, Erin, should I just go ahead and wrap it up?
Yeah, go for it. I think while you're doing so, feel free to throw into the chat like your main takeaways, any thoughts that you had. I know that breakout room flew by really fast, but feel free, please use that chat, and I'd love to hear what people thought of their breakout room discussions.
Yeah, absolutely. And everybody, I hope you did screenshot this. Because honestly, keep working on this, please. Keep thinking about it. You know, make that list and keep it someplace where you have to look at it all the time, because you're gonna change things. You're gonna rework it. You're going to, yeah, you're going to change your mind. And as you grow and change as a person, you'll see some of these traits will kind of alter as well. So here's the final thoughts I want to leave everybody with. A lot of times the most difficult moment to, you know, find our voice, really hold our place at the table, is in high stakes situations with some adversity. Choose to be at your very best under those conditions. It's a choice. And just remember, like, if you're uncomfortable, if you're vulnerable, and you're still speaking out, and you're still working for your place in the room, that means you're getting stronger, right? When you work out, your muscles have to be sore in order to get stronger. And then please, please, please keep this conversation going. Build that circle of influence. Find those people who are going to check you, help you be strategic. And that's it. That's what I've got. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rebecca. This was awesome. This was a wonderful, wonderful chat. Again, feel free to keep throwing in your main takeaways and do some reflecting on this activity. I thought it was really, really special, really empowering. So thank you so much, Rebecca. We really appreciate your time jumping in for this coffee chat. And thank you, everybody, for attending. We really appreciate you being here, and we'll see you for the next one in June.